Namaskara and welcome to BIC Talks, a podcast brought to you by Bangalore International Centre, where we present conversations that move, inform, and encourage discourse.
There was this very famous jewelry ad which had come out, Tanishq. And that Tanishq had produced this beautiful ad. I don't want jewelry, I don't buy jewelry, I fight against it. But that ad had Muslim bride and a Hindu mother-in-law or vice versa talk to each other about jewelry. But I'm afraid capitalism lost out. And this divisive, polarized mentality won, and that ad had to be withdrawn. And how many of us kept quiet about it? How many of us spoke? I think we just have to speak against everything. They don't allow a single thing to happen without raising their voice. And we keep quiet.
Contemporary India is witness to a huge change in which space for serious conversations on all aspects of culture is receding. The advocacy of religious cultural nationalism has come to replace all forms of culture. It has also come to take many forms. For instance, the murder of Rationalists, Kalburgi, Pansare, and Gauri Lankesh underlines the contested nature of secularism and the fragile space for freedom of thought in religion, media, and culture in India. There has been a determined attempt to rewrite the cultural history of India, a project that has fed into the writing of school textbooks. The rise of online archival projects offering alternative accounts of Indian history, the popular culture of televised Hinduism, curbs on art and cinema, the huge nexus of religion and market, rise of hate speech are signals to a certain kind of revivalism. Writings that celebrate plurality and tolerance are being decried, systematically countered, and a monolithic agenda of culture is gradually being established. In the absence of a real space for cultural conversations, politics dominates all kinds of discourses. In this episode of BIC Talks, Aruna Roy, activist and former civil servant, sheds light on these receding spaces. This lecture took place at the BIC premises in early January 2024 as the U.R. Ananthamurthy Memorial Lecture.
I met Professor Ananthamurthy immediately after he had been issued the ticket to Pakistan by the BJP, when he had said that he didn't want to live in a country ruled by Modi. And I remember that evening I spent after a conversation like this in an institute in Bangalore, and memories of that evening have been with me forever. I'm extremely honored also to be invited to speak in the memory of a remarkable human being who was a writer, who was a cultural person in the best definition of the term, who understood politics, who understood literature, who understood the condition of people, who understood also that the division between various categories in life are thin indeed, that you don't have to dislike Ramana because you like Gandhi, you don't have to dislike Gandhi because you like Marx, or whether you like somebody else. The mistakes that we have made, painting ourselves into very many corners, into ideologies that don't allow us to look at others. Today, as I sit with you, I'm quite anxious that I don't confuse you further, because the times are such today that whatever we do, we are caught within a warp and a weft, not of our making, but very often perpetuated by things that we have done or not done. Especially someone my age who has lived along with the independence and seen Mahatma Gandhi, heard of and seen Ambedkar at a distance, seen all the initial members of the Congress party who gave us independence, been in New Delhi, the inferno of today, but at that time a reasonably good city. And I feel that people of my generation will have many more questions to answer perhaps than younger people. But we've done our best. Perhaps we didn't understand many things. Perhaps we understand them better today. But I think we did try and do our very best. I've been reading Hindutva and Hind Swaraj just a month ago. I began reading it again. And it has really made me feel that the best way to remember Professor Ananthamurthy today would have been to read from his books, rather than let people like me spout forth something or the other. It would have been best to remember him in his own words, with his own feelings and his own ideas. Today, before I begin, because I'm going to speak about the receding horizons of shared spaces, I want to quote from an extremely important modern writer from South America who passed away 2 years ago, called Eduardo Aliano, who has had a profound impact on me ever since I heard him talking about democracy in Europe about 20 years ago. A man who spoke with parables and stories with an extraordinary understanding of politics, who brought alive the principles of political courage through fables and through narratives. Someone asked him, what's the point? I'm paraphrasing. What's the point of a utopia? Because you never reach there. So he said, the point of a utopia is something like the horizon. You look at it and you know probably that you'll never reach it, but you still walk towards it. So it's not the horizon that's important, it's the walking that's important. And friends, when I sit with you today, I'm a walker. And if all of us walk, India will change. The problem is that we don't walk. We should walk. And I'm not talking of Rahul Gandhi's walk, which was also important in its own way, but I'm talking of doing something, of sullying one's hand, of one's mind, one's efforts with what needs to be done to take things forward. And I think one of the biggest problems of the last 20 years has been that where their people have walked, they've been attacked. And where they have not, they have been afraid to walk. But I'm afraid we must walk. And I'll quote Gandhi. Gandhiji said that in the worst of times, you must continue to do what you're doing. And I add, lest you forget how to struggle. I'm afraid that if we don't struggle, we'll forget how to struggle. Because struggle is not just one grand word in which you go and sit somewhere. It's the nitty-gritty of details. How do you get the data? How do you prepare people? How do you talk to people? How do you get the money from fundraising from people? How do you organize? How do you step in? How do you face nights upon nights on street corners and streets? How do you face the physical struggle? How do you face the mental tension? Now, these are all skills we learn as activists, and we can't forget those skills. And we can't forget to impart those skills to other generations to come. So that's one very important thing I feel we all have to learn, that whatever we have done, we must continue to do. The scale may be different, the reach may be different, but I think we must continue to do. And this is an inspiration I've got also from reading Professor Ananthamurthy. In India, we've grown up with two different kinds of moral authority. One was what came to me through the constitutional principles, which, being born of very literate parents, I knew about the Constitution from a very early age. So I grew up with the knowledge of how important the Constitution was in taking India to its post-freedom era. My father always said that Gandhi was important to get his independence, but without Dr. Ambedkar, there would have been no modern India. There would have been no structure through which we could have fought for equality, liberty, fraternity, the dignity of the individual, the preamble to the Constitution, which is for me my most important prayer today. Without Ambedkar, we couldn't have gone ahead. So for all of us, there are questions, and as I go on, I'll try and summarize those questions because we don't have a great deal of time. But on the other side, we lived with superstition, we lived with witchcraft, we lived with people being killed, we lived with dowries, we lived with marriage advertisements in the Hindustan Times, we lived with many other evils. And none of us really strongly questioned them. The women's movement did up to a point, but not beyond that. We never questioned the stranglehold that traditional culture had on many people, and we did not try to understand our own predicament of switching from one to the other, not fully understanding, not fully accepting, not fully in consonance with, but still part of many traditions that have run this country. We have allowed ourselves to be painted into a corner, and this position we must resist now. We are not painted into a corner, we walked out. We are free. We can go anywhere. We can question anything. We can speak about anything. Maybe we'll have to temper our language a bit, but you can talk, and we must talk. The other issue that concerned the MKSS and concerns all of us today is how do you deal with power? In Hind Swaraj and Hindutva, Professor Antamurthy compares Savarkar and Gandhi and talks about Savarkar's desire for nationhood, for power, for statehood, for wielding power. Gandhi being inward looking, dealing with morality, which dealt with himself. But I'm afraid we need Gandhi, but we don't need Savarkar. But we have to learn how to deal with that power. And Dr. Ambedkar gave us the Constitution and gave us lessons in how to deal with that power, and we haven't learned them. So today I feel there's still no time lost. People in Karnataka are very depressed. I've spoke to a few friends outside. But we sitting in Rajasthan are so happy about Karnataka because in Karnataka, BJP lost. So we are very happy that at least at one level today, there is an expression of some kind of democratic resistance, even though it be the poll and nothing more than a vote. But still, Karnataka has space to breathe today. I remember when Rajasthan, the Congress won 5 years ago, people came from Delhi, they said, we've just come to inhale some oxygen because we can speak. And however the Rajasthan government was, it dialogued with us, it engaged with us, it gave us platforms to speak. We protested against them along with all our engagements. We fought against them on various issues. We demanded. All that concurrently went on. This is not ideal. It's not paradise. But at least it is a kind of democracy we are used to, where you can protest and you can engage with power to demand what is your due. We all thought that the idea of India would not change. That there is some vague idea. We being a very pluralistic people and with so many different opinions and languages and cultures and traditions. But on one issue, we all agreed that there was a vague India, vague idea of India or imagination of India we all agreed with. I remember there used to be a joke when I was about my 20s about how somebody in Europe wanted to know whether all Indians had beards and turbans. And then another European said, no, they're all dark and they only wear white, loincloths. Indians cannot be described. Indians were beyond description in that sense. Our clothing, our food, our attire, our beliefs, our faiths were pluralistic. This was given. We never questioned that would be taken away. What came as a shock, I think has come as a shock and continues to frighten some of us is the fact that it has happened. After Gujarat, and I was there in Gujarat, Tista had set up an inquiry committee into the Gujarat genocide. And I was there and we had many justices who were members of that. And in that committee's report was presented to government. And when I came away from Gujarat with I was never so sick in my mind as I was after Gujarat, as I was then. It was terrible those days. And I thought, it's possible in Gujarat, but it can't happen in India. We're just too plural. We have just too many different contexts. We have very different people. We have too many ideas. We belong to too many different traditions. It can't happen in India. But that seemed to have worked somehow. And that mix is something that is confusing us, frightening us, and making us come together to sit today to talk about what we could do to go ahead, to bring back, however confused and however mixed up the Indian was, to bring back that Indian who accepted plurality, difference, dissent, and gave space to the argumentative Indian in the train, in the bus, in the chai dukan, who could tell you off, who could tell you that he didn't like or liked, and there was no fear. What has happened is there's this monocultural nationalism is completely antithetic to all of us. We have built, unfortunately, a majoritarian democracy. And many of us have been helpless, but I have questions to ask of myself. And I'm sure you all have questions to ask of yourself, that where did we go wrong that we allowed this majoritarian democracy to flourish? And we didn't come strongly enough into that framework to resist, to desist, to confront, and to change it. We looked for a social democracy, but the social democracy hasn't happened. And the only part of India that raised issues of social democracy vociferously were the few governments where there was a left party. Be that as it may, it has also questions to answer. But all the activists, they also have questions to answer. But the activists all over this country in small and big groups got together to question the state about the issue of social democracy. Those of us who know Ambedkar don't need the quotation, but we all know what he said about social democracy. We have fought majoritarian positions on very many issues. We fought against issues of economics, issues of social justice, we have done so many things. But somehow we have now been relegated into Andolan GVs, urban Nakshals. And I think we should wear that badge and say, yes, we are urban Nakshals, so what? We are not Andolan GVs, certainly. We don't live on the Andolans. But certainly, let me see any one of them sit on a 1-year strike like the farmers did on the outskirts of Delhi to fight for their rights. No matter that the Sikhs were well provided for, they had excellent kitchens, they had libraries, they had everything. But let me see if anyone can last that out. So what do they mean by Andolan GVs? And have we, as a group of people, protested against these definitions? That's another thing we have to find out. Anyway, let me just read out Ambedkar. Not all of him, but some of him I'll read out because it's a long quotation. He says we should not be content with mere political democracy. And I think we were all, up to some point, content with political democracy. He said we must make our political democracy a social democracy. Political democracy cannot last unless there lies at the base of it social democracy. And I think very soon we may descend into being no democracy at all. And how many of us have resisted, spoken out, or written or talked consistently about it? So to recognize liberty, equality, and fraternity as the principles of life, that they form a union of trinity, in the sense that divorce one from the other is to defeat the very purpose of democracy. Liberty cannot be divorced from equality. Equality cannot be divorced from liberty, nor can liberty and equality be divorced from fraternity. Equality without liberty would kill individual initiative. And he goes on. He says, on the social plane, we have in India a society based on the principle of graded inequality, which means elevation for some and degradation for others. On the economic plane, we have a society in which there are some who have immense wealth as against many who live in abject poverty. None of us have raised our voices, or not enough. I'm not talking about people sitting here, but those outside who have no thought about it. We have not raised it strong enough and loud enough so that those activists who raise these issues for Dalits, for tribals, for Adivasis are now in jail. What did they demand? I'm sorry to use Hindi, but it's roti, kapda, and makan. Simple things that in spite of so many years of independence, we hadn't got. So we managed to get a mandate and a legitimacy from the Constitution and Ambedkar for many years. We also used civil disobedience and satyagraha as the mode, and we had no qualms about it. We sat civil disobedience, we opposed existing laws, we sat in dharna, we sat for days on end, we practiced non-violence, and we had no problems at all about sitting on street corners, in streets, on wherever. And Medha, of course, went and even submerged herself in the Narmada and stood chest high in water for a long time. We have to see how the living reality of people approximates to this concept. And I just want to go back to my experience in the MKSS and tell you a few things. In the MKSS, we live in a mud and stone hut in a village. Some people have told me that it's very romantic and it's just a whim of living in a mud hut because I'll never ever be anyone else who lives like me in a mud hut. Of course, it's true. My mind is not like that person's mind. But nevertheless, those 18 to 20 years spent in that mud hut produced a kind of understanding of politics which produced the essential seeds of the Right to Information campaign. And power to the Manrega. There were lots of people who joined the Manrega campaign. But power to the Manrega, understanding the exact nature of the privation and problems of ordinary people, their extraordinary imaginations, their extreme skills, their capacity to endure and struggle, which made all these three struggles successful. The right to information, Manrega, and the right to food. There was a person called Mohanji, who was a Dalit, illiterate, but one of the biggest repositories of Kabir songs. He knew 500 Kabir songs, but he was not literate. Mohanji contributed not only to the struggle by persistently being there and carrying the message to not only to people who were in active struggle, but to all the bhajan mandalis he attended. Wherever he went, the discourse was turned around to talk about poverty, to talk about Narega, to talk about issues of food security, of the right to information. In fact, it was he who said for the first time in those words that if those papers don't come out, we will be labeled liars forever. Those papers must come out. That was his statement. He composed a song And those days, we didn't have your WhatsApp. We didn't have your social media. Thank God for it anyway. But we didn't have it. So how do you spread news quickly and far and wide? So Mohanji made a song. And he was a songwriter. He was a lyricist as well. So he wrote this lyric in which he said in Hindi, "Pehle wale chor bhaya banduko se marta tha. Abhe wala chor to kalmao mare re raj choron ka." The people who exploited you in the past killed you with a gun. The oppressors have now killed you with a pen. It's the reign of corrupt people, of dacoits. This song became one of the most popular songs in Rajasthan at that time, sung in many communities and accepted as the norm. Now, what I'm trying to say is that Aruna Roy, even Nikhil, who's here, Nikhil Day, could not have conveyed to the people the essence of the right to information struggle as Mohanji did. Today, we are not in conversation with those people about religion. We are not in conversation with those people about worship. We are not in conversation with people about this strangely monocultural centralization and consumerism that we are talking about now today. We are not asking them, do you think it's right? We have not talked to them. We have not spent time with them. We only take out yatras. And yatras don't touch human beings. They just whiz past you. You go on a motorcycle, you go in a car. Even if you walk, you don't spend time in that village to sit down and say, but why do you think like this? If you think back on Narayan Guru, think about Phule, you think about the Brahmo Samaj in Bengal, you think about Ramaswamy Naikar, you think about anybody who's brought about real change. They had time. And we've never had that time. And we always thought it was enough if we just passed by. And in that branding and in that sloganeering, we have failed. Because I'm afraid people will buy that surf packet, that 10 rupee surf packet, much easier than they will buy what you and I say. Anything you see today, there's the 10 rupee surf packet which comes. So we are lulled into believing that the 10 rupee surf packet will succeed. So also all the jingles that have come to us through the right wing, all the jingles about religion, all the jingles about many other things which stick in your head. But we have not been able to contest that area. But people like Mohanji and many others still continue to challenge this capitalist society in many ways. But we don't see them. We don't feel that they exist. And one of the biggest mistakes in India is that we don't mobilize them into a unit of people who will contest politically what's happening today. Sharing demands equality. Sharing cannot be between unequal people. There is charity. Sharing means that you give with a wholeheartedness and a feeling that it is something that belongs not only to you, but to a collective of human beings. It needs equality. And I'm afraid equality is really in short supply in this country today. It's a coin that we can't see very easily, and we can't see it happening everywhere. But the majoritarian concept has certainly taken possession of all of us to the extent to which we think that it has completely won the argument today. Even if you see the interpretation of the Rajasthan results today, Rajasthan, the BJP won by 1.75% of the votes. There are 4 interpretations of the Rajasthan elections. One from the village itself, where the polling booth will tell you why a particular individual got more votes. Then you come a little further down below, up, and then or down below or up, and then you have this little unit called the block that will tell you what happened there. Then you'll have an interpretation from the district and people who sit and do nothing but talk about it. And you'll have another opinion at the state level and a 5th opinion at the central level, and many interpretations in terms of politics. If you see the nature of voting, the voting is not only because of religious biases, but it's also because of caste. And a feudal system we have inherited and continue to nurture without real questioning. We don't really question caste and feudalism through logic, rationality, and discussion in most of India. So they would say to me, no, you see that part of Rajasthan, Eastern Rajasthan, they voted according to dharma, religion. But Western Rajasthan voted according to religion. But Eastern Rajasthan didn't. We don't care about religion. We voted by caste. Now, for you and me, it would make no difference whether it's a caste vote or a religious vote. But politically, it means a great deal of difference. So I think what we need to do also is to look at the details which we haven't seen. And always we get into strange feelings of depression without understanding that the Indian polity is as complex and as culturally different as all the other cultural things that we take for granted. So voting patterns are also decided. I don't know enough about Karnataka, but I definitely know that there is a problem with two major groups, the Lingayats and the others. And therefore, your vote pattern may not necessarily only be decided by what the BJP and the Congress says, but by other considerations which are particular to your state. So how do we fight when a Dalit who benefits from the Constitution and a Dalit who has benefited from the Constitution in some ways is not educated about the Constitution either by his own community, his own political group, or by people like us, and is not willing to commit today when we say the Constitution is going to be changed. And therefore, you must fight this battle and you can't vote a party which is framing a different Constitution. What would we say about us? What would we say about them? In this entire debate about constitutional validity and this dream of India, idea of India, repeatedly you would have seen on the YouTube, so many of us saying that the idea of India is the Constitution and the preamble is our prayer. But it's for us. But when you look at the people who have actually benefited from it, the relationship between what they've got today and the constitutional article in the Constitution which has given them that benefit is not even remotely connected. How do you connect that particular aspect of the benefit that that Dalit or that woman or that marginal group or the OBC has got to what has been said in the Constitution is a big challenge which we didn't take. In the last 10 years, maybe even 15 years, it has become an obsession with social activists. It's become now an obsession with state governments because we have the government of Kerala taking out marches on the Constitution. I don't know what they've called it. Some of you may know. And the government of Karnataka is now also planning to take out yatras on the Constitution into the villages of Karnataka. The government of Rajasthan built what they called Samvidhan Kendras, centers from which the Constitution would be taught and people would understand about the Constitution. Many of us felt that their attack on the Constitution is to actually totally destroy the concept of secular India. But people who benefited from this Constitution would have had another stake in that Constitution. And we don't have the same stake. When we want anything, we fight for struggles for everything that the Right to Information campaign taught us was that everyone comes for the same purpose, but they understand the importance of that particular legal entitlement in many interpretations of what they will all benefit from. We have not been able to perform that task well enough. Whereas the right wing goes to every place and doesn't talk about Ram in my village in Rajasthan, would talk about a Kul Devata there. Asa Mata, you have not made a temple to Asa Mata. They have not made a temple to Asa Mata. We'll make a temple to Asa Mata. There is no Ram mentioned there. They'll go to some other place and talk about some other deity. We have not developed a technique and a technology and an understanding of what makes people the way they are. In terms of faith, we simply don't understand today. We have to also understand that people don't even understand fully the relationship between Manrega and a government at the center which is nailing Manrega. We've had a huge protest in Delhi talking about BJP Hatao, Narega Bachao and all of that. But when you come down to the grassroots, many people who want Narega have voted BJP. Because at the last minute, because they don't live in this duality that we exist, of one constitutional morality and one traditional morality, the two get confused. They don't see the one from the other at certain points of time. They have voted BJP. And now many of them in Rajasthan face a problem because Manrega is shrinking. The Congress is gone, the Manrega is shrinking, and they still don't know, and they don't know how to address the problem today. There are also issues on which the middle class has a lot to answer. And I include myself. Please don't think I'm excluding myself. That we have, for many of us, we have a politics of convenience and comfort. And that politics of convenience and comfort has pushed us into not taking our own logic to the ultimate end. There is a logic to even what we do, what we want. But we don't take it to its logical end because we are compromised heavily because of our dependence on technology, our dependence on so many other benefits we get from the state. We are compromised. And today, this language of convenience and comfort, the want of convenience and comfort has taken over. I'll just mention one issue on which MKSS had a lot of worries and trouble, which it shared with the working class people, which was the Aadhaar card. And the Aadhaar card is supposed to have been magic for everybody. ATM card is a magic for everybody. But many people have been swindled by the ATM card at local levels, I know. The Aadhaar card has been a problem because if your Aadhaar card goes, you're out of that list and you're dead so far as all benefits are concerned. This government in Delhi is using more and more technology for surveillance. I'm sure I'm surveyed, so I'm under surveillance, but I don't know how many others may be in this group. So we all know that it is using it for surveillance and not really for benefit. We know from our figures that we read in the Oxfam report, we know that from figures we read elsewhere. Even the IMF or the World Bank produce some figures which shows our economy is not good anymore, that it has really fallen. But our people are buying the myth that we are extremely well off, that everything's wonderful, and all these cards that flash before their eyes give them some kind of magic. But I know that when we had this dharna in Delhi, and people came asking for pension, poor people. You won't believe me, the government of India gives 200 rupees a month old age pension today for the unorganized sector, for a targeted group. What is 200 rupees? It's a shame. So we went on dharna at the end of the UPA government. And there was this man who came from Bihar with a pack of cards. And he thought, if I take all these cards to Delhi, my pension will be done in a minute. Frail old man who used to peddle a cycle rickshaw came with those cards to say, here are my cards. And he went to the Ministry of Justice in Delhi, social justice, produced his cards and said to the minister, I brought all my cards. Can you give me my pension? And that woman, who was a tough politician, had wet eyes. She took out her wallet and gave him all the money she had there. But she said, I can't do anything for you. So unless we get social justice, unless we have social development, unless we have welfare schemes, unless we have all these, the people we want to fight to get India into a better place are not going to be able to. So I think we have to see the battles we have of these fading horizons, not merely in terms of our articulation, our freedom of expression, but the freedom of expression of that common person who can't get daily bread, can't get the rations. We have to evolve a polity which will bring it all together and link it together. And all the old philosophies, political philosophies that did, will have to be revived. A new language and idiom will have to be given. And I'm sure we can change India rather quickly, much more quickly than we all think we can. Democratic engagement with power has to be unpacked. Who is my MLA? How many of us go and tell our MLAs off? Have we ever met that MLA? How many of us have met our MLAs? Have we gone to that man's house or that woman's house and told her or him, you represent me in the assembly, this is my problem. What have you done about it? It's a democratic system. We believe that people will be elected to power. We believe that an assembly will sit and decide on policy and legislation. We have to go and use these systems. We have to go to the MP and sit outside the MP's house and want to know what were, if it's a BJP MP, what was happening in the Lok Sabha that you threw out 143 people that day. How can you pass 3 laws in my name when I don't agree that you should pass a new set of criminal laws without public debate? How could you do it? We haven't asked. So whatever powers we have, we are not using it. And the system that sits there is a system that's going to beat us and kill us in the end. And we have the power of sovereignty in that vote that we cast. I think we also have taken a lopsided view of public action. Public action also has to change the way it behaves and the way it accosts power. I'm going to tell you briefly about how Rajasthan has taken cognizance of the possibilities of using our vote and our mandate to get things done. We had the old experience of getting these rights-based laws passed in Delhi. In 2005, we got the Right to Information Law passed. We got the MGNREGA passed. Lots of campaigns in India got together and fought for that collective space to engage with power, to make power do what it promised us. So speak truth to power, if you like. Make truth accountable, power accountable, if you like. We have to do it. We've got to spend time. So if that had not happened, there would have been no right to information law. Our campaigns were excellent. People participated in it. But we had to draw everyone into that discussion and debate. And we had to accost power, we had to confront power. Even today, you'll tell me it's difficult, but it has to be done. We have to take them where they are most vulnerable. We have to break them up into individuals. We can't face the Lok Sabha. We face our MPs. We face people whom we can, our MLAs. So the MKSS has had this relationship, and the Suchna Rozgar Abhiyan, which is part of our larger campaign in Rajasthan, has engaged with power, because if we sat wailing that we were not given the chance, that Nikhil and I or the MKSS was not given the chance to do our work, we would have never got on. Please don't believe anyone who says that we are not targeted, because there's been sufficient propaganda against us, calling us all the various choice epithets I told you about in the beginning. Publications against us have been published and handed over to people saying that they are enemies of the state. Watch out. Do I get into a niche where I fight that? Or do I fight them on issues in which there is law on my side, justice on my side, and people who have nothing gain from that fight? It's a choice I make. And in the struggles of SR Abhiyan, we've got some remarkable things done in the last 5 years in Rajasthan, and I'll just quickly go through it. We did a gig workers law, the first in the world, definitely the first in India. And you know who these gig workers are? The people who come and deliver your Amazon, whatever you book on Amazon. The people who are, I don't know, what do you call them, who take a motorcycle and deliver things from various places to you? The whole lot, about whom Nandita Das has also made a film, by the way. All these people are completely out of the net because labor relationships have changed. The workers' relationship to the employer has changed. How do you deal with a gig worker who's just on contract for that brief period, an Uber driver, a driver on some other car, or anything else? Everybody is now only on contract. And very soon, teachers will be on contract, everyone else will be on contract. And I've heard in Ramjas College, they have brought in AI to replace temporary teachers in the English department. So we have new enemies coming up everywhere. So when the whole conditions are, all these conditions are changing, we have to be innovative on how we fight these laws. And Nikhil and the SR Abhiyan sat with this law, with the government, dialogued with them, and set up a tripartite board, much in the nature of what Baba Adhav has done in Maharashtra for the Hamal Panchayat. I don't know if you know Baba Adhav. He's one of the persons I respect the most, because he works in Maharashtra, is now over 90 years old. And he set up this Hamal Panchayat. There were more than 1 lakh of Hamals, headloaders, coolies, whom he mobilized, and set up a tripartite board in which the Hamals now have pension and they have health care. Amazing things. So we have to learn how to fight the system differently. What we've lost, we've lost. There's no point crying about it. We just have to pull our socks up. I mean, you don't have any socks, nor do I generally, but I have them on today. And fight our battles. And we have to look for areas which are soft areas, but which are fundamental to this notion of equality, justice, and liberty that our constitution has given us. So there was the gig workers law. The first Urban Employment Guarantee Act in India, we've got in Rajasthan. Now the gig workers law, Karnataka government and Andhra, the new government, want to enact those laws. I'm not saying it's going to be paradise. Far from it. It's going to be trouble, but may not be enacted, may be enacted. The working of the system may not work out. There may be problems. But we have to look at places where we can continue to struggle. So urban employment guarantee. No other state in India has the urban employment guarantee. So if you get the urban employment guarantee in Rajasthan, we trade off it. Our colleagues and friends in other states can say, Rajasthan has got it. Why can't we have an Urban Employment Guarantee Act? So there's NREGA is a Rural Employment Guarantee Act. You have an Urban Employment Guarantee Act. Look at the numbers of people who are unemployed in cities. We have India's first social security pension law in Rajasthan. I don't know how many of you see coolies and old women on the streets. I feel extremely sad when I see them. A woman of my age has to lift earth, stones. How the hell can she? And there's no pension for her. And the pension, if Government of India gives it 200 rupees, I don't know how much Karnataka government gives. So the first social security pension law has been passed with an inbuilt escalation for inflation every year. So there are 1,000 rupees a month plus roughly about, 150 rupees or so every year, which goes up. They also passed India's first right to health law. All this we were doing when Modi was reigning in Delhi. I just wanted to go through this because one has to look for opportunities to do something. And we have to walk. As I said, we have to walk. We can't say, oh, that door is closed, this door is closed, I'm going to sit back and have a gala time, or I'm going to cry. Neither of them is possible. You can neither cry nor laugh. You're just in pain. So the best thing to do is to take opportunities as they come. We also have worked on budgetary provisions and rights for Dalits and Adivasis. It seems just 5 things, but it's taken the juice out of our campaigns. You have to collect data, you have to struggle. We've sat on dharnas. While we've been negotiating with government, we've also sat in dharna in Jaipur, month after month to see that. But we failed to get the most important act through, which was the accountability law. Because what has happened with the right to information law, you all know. Despite the fact that 80 lakh Indians use it every year, we have lost more than 100 odd activists. They've been killed. And we also know, all of us maybe, that information comes out, but there's no action on that information. Whom do you hold responsible? You know that people are guilty. You know that things are going wrong, but there is no action about that. So we wanted an accountability law. I'm afraid we failed to get that accountability law. And the accountability law was also collectively framed. And I'm going back to my young Dalit friends in a district called Bhilwara in Rajasthan, who said very clearly that the right to information law by of itself will not give us justice. We have to have, they framed it, they said, jankari, information, karwai, implementation, bhagidari, participation, suraksha, protection, and janta ka manch. Whereas we don't want a sarkari manch. We don't want a government platform. We need a people's platform where we can speak and make ourselves heard. So that's an important issue that we have to go to people. I'll very quickly go through some other issues which I think are important. And one I'm going to speak about, since I am speaking in memory of Professor Anantamurthy, about language. Language, and I'm not talking about just Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, Hindi, Rajasthani. I'm talking about the unpacking of concepts. You just sit down and you say, oh, you know, Dr. Ambedkar said this. They don't know who Dr. Ambedkar is. They know the name, but they have nothing else, no clue. You say Constituent Assembly, they don't know anything about the Constituent Assembly. You say, it goes on and on and on and on. Every single concept has to be unpacked. Our whole country has gone through a literacy program, but it has not been educated. Schools have brought in huge numbers of people with degrees, but they don't have the educational content to really work this democracy, and that's why today they are being manipulated. So how are we going to set about simple tasks of just making these concepts clear? You know, I went once long ago to Denmark, and they had something called folk schools. They set up these folk schools immediately after they got democracy to educate their people about how to work this democracy. I think we failed to educate people about how to work this democracy for them, for themselves. But where they have to understand collective bargaining, they also have to understand how to use the laws that exist to get there. And I think all of us can do something about it. Whatever it is that there is lacking in people in and around our homes and our places of work. If at all we want people to come together, we have to contest the methods of communication. And if you want, you have to look at the communication technology that we have today. We're all upset with WhatsApp universities. We're all upset with the vice chancellors of most universities being plants. We're upset with lecturers being removed to a certain ideological position coming in. We'll have to find ways of countering this. We'll have to build those folk cultures that we have, which are rich in nuanced thought, in singing, in folk storytelling, in creating so many wonderful things which now only sell as handicraft, but behind which each one of them is political philosophy. We have to bring them all together, not just to sell handicrafts, for which I was here 2 years ago with a group of friends from Rajasthan, but to really talk about folk culture. And again, Eduardo Galeano has another poem called Nobodies. The poor have no art but craft, he says. It's true. But behind that craft is a political ideology. Behind the music, there's a political ideology. And we have to revive these forms to fight Bollywood, which at one time produced political films which talked about the poor man and the anti-hero. Today talks about killing, and I won't go through the various titles, where they glorify separateness, they glorify the other, they glorify the whole lot of things that we don't like. How do we counter it? We have to counter it with much of culture that exists, and that culture has to be promoted and developed. I'm sure that you've heard T.M. Krishna with his Karnataka group singing. I don't know how many of you heard him singing. And then in Rajasthan, we have these Langas and Manganihars who sing Sufi songs and who are fated all over the world. They go to Queen Elizabeth Hall, they've been to the Bolshoi, they've been to Wigmore Hall, they've been to Tokyo, they've been to France, they've been everywhere. When they come back, they go back to their huts. So we persuaded the government of Rajasthan that they should become part of Narega. That while others go and dig earth, get this whole wonderful group of musicians to go and teach that music in schools or hold concerts in their areas. And I don't know how many of you know about Latif and Bulle Shah. How many of you know about those marvelous music from after Khwaja Mainuddin Chishti, whose dargah is in Ajmer. Rajasthan has a very strong Sufi culture. To bring that Sufi culture to counter this divisive, polarized culture that we are all victims of. We have many things more to answer. We have a capitalist economy which is encroached upon me, you, everybody. Our dependence on various things. We just don't question it anymore. And the unfortunate thing is that the cultural divisiveness between religions, this polarization and this kind of hatred that has come to be, also plays upon advertisements. It plays upon various things that are sold to you and me. We never question it. We take it. And then, of course, women's groups know this very well. But I'll repeat one of them, that there was this very famous jewelry ad which had come out, Tanishq. And that Tanishq had produced this beautiful ad. I don't want jewelry. I don't buy jewelry. I fight against it. But that ad had Muslim bride and a Hindu mother-in-law or vice versa talk to each other about jewelry. But I'm afraid capitalism lost out. And this divisive, polarized mentality won, and that ad had to be withdrawn. And how many of us kept quiet about it? How many of us spoke? I think we just have to speak against everything. They don't allow a single thing to happen without raising their voice. And we keep quiet. I think we should begin to talk, we should begin to write, and we should begin to question, just as Professor Anantamurthy did. We'll have to question. Anyway, I'll end here with just one more story, which is one of my favorite stories, again, originated from a Sufi set of stories that are very popular from Turkestan to Hindustan, about Mullah Nasruddin. There is this story about the mullah that he was looking for his key in his yard. And as he was looking for the key in his yard, his friend joined him. They hunted for 2.5 hours or 3 hours or whatever, long time. The friend got absolutely irritated and he said, "Where the hell did you lose your key?" So the mullah blandly said, "Inside." They said, "Why are we looking for it outside, in your courtyard?" So he said, "Because there's more light." And I'm afraid most of us do that. We only go where there is light. But we have to go to the darker parts of India, and there is great light there, let me assure you. It only looks dark when you're here. But when you enter that part of India, you will gain strength. And all those young people that the School for Democracy has trained as constitutional fellows who came in the beginning not knowing the beginning or the end of the Constitution, but just knew the preamble. That too is an imposition on them that they had to chant the preamble every day, have now realized how important the Constitution is to make their lives better, not my life better. So in fact, sometimes I feel that we must start with some rituals. And our ritual will be pledge to the Indian Constitution with the preamble before any meeting. I didn't do it today because I didn't want to offend your sensibilities. But in most cases, wherever we go into a rural audience today, we take the pledge first and then talk. And I remember my mother saying that these shlokas or the chants or the prayers are useless when you're young, but when you grow older, you remember them. and then they make sense. But the pledge makes sense. And one of our students who had got the pledge went to a panchayat where they had fought against liquor and made a great impact, and the liquor shop was closed. She went there, and when they wanted to garland or do something, she said, no, this whole panchayat will take the pledge to the constitution, and she recited, chanted the preamble. I think we have to look for other modes. We have to look for something. And believe me that I want to die walking. I don't want to be caught, straddled to a chair, inshallah. I don't fall ill and get straddled to a chair. But otherwise, there is no point not doing anything. And I think the most important thing to do is to walk to that horizon. Thank you.
You have been listening to BIC Talks by Bangalore International Centre. If you like what you heard, do follow us on social media. Keep up with our programming by signing up for our mailer on the website, or leave us a review or rating on Apple Podcasts or iTunes. The crew that makes these podcasts possible is Gaurav Krishna and Ishan Gupta on sound supervision and production, with support from S. Saranaraj and Raghu Tenkaila. Artwork is designed by Chandni Venkataraman of Crisscross Design Studio. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel on your favorite podcast platform. It can also be accessed on our website, bangaloreinternationalcentre.org. This is Lekha Naidu signing off on behalf of everyone at BIC.